So far, it's been a season filled with drama, action, and intense battles. It's also been a season filled with domination by some of the top organizations in all of PRL action. Tonight, the PRL Cup Series visits the Bluegrass Saints State for the first time in 2020 as they get ready to tackle the virtual Kentucky Speedway here on the Global SimRacing Channel. Good evening and welcome to Sparta, Kentucky for Round 5 of the Precision Racing League Cup Series season, sponsored by iRacing Flea Market. I'm Justin Prince. On the move tonight is NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series driver Christian Schellner. Behind the scenes is our director Sean Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Since the last time this series came to this track, there's been a new rescan which has been released for Kentucky Speedway. Let's take a look at the best way to drive it on the GSRC Lap Guide.
This is Sparta, Kentucky, and Kentucky Speedway. 1.5 miles of asphalt and one of the more interesting trials to come out of the mid to late 90s track boom opening in the year 2000. Sure, you might think it's a basic trial-able, but look at the track map and it'll show you that turns 1 and 2 are, well, blunter. Also makes it a little bit more sweeping. But the bottom line is that it isn't as symmetric. Turns 3 and 4, so you have to approach them differently. This became even more crucial to note after the track reconfiguration in 2016. Before, both 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 were 14 degrees, but now 1 and 2 have been brought up to 17 degrees. That 3 degrees makes a big difference here. Another big change was that they narrowed the track in 1 and 2 by 16 feet, and that's about 2.5 car widths of a Gen 6 Cup car for reference. Enough of a difference that it changed the line going into the corner. They left turns 3 and 4 alone during the reconfiguration, with the exception of some new asphalt. So the tendency that most cars have to get loose off 4 is still as present today as ever. Today, all of NASCAR's National Touring Series run here. The ARCA Series usually makes one stop here, if not 2. The trucks are known for putting on a fantastic show, and the iRacing B Series cars have had some good races here as well over the last few years. And of course, the Cup Series cars will barrel around here. IndyCar ran some races here in the early 2000s, and while real-life IndyCar doesn't make the trip anymore, many iRacing IndyCar leagues still do and put on a great show. Now, sit back and enjoy today's race in the Bluegrass State.
That was a look at your GSRC Lap Guide, the best way around the newly scanned Kentucky Speedway. I was bringing my broadcast partner for tonight, Christian Schellner, and this is a track which is completely different to its predecessor, with the differences in banking and the differences in how the surface feels. Your thoughts on this racetrack tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. The old track was extremely rough. It was an extremely different challenge. Obviously, that surface roughness made the old track very, very difficult to get around. This new track, very, very smooth, almost like glass, actually. And turns 1 and 2, 17 degrees of banking, so a little bit easier than turns 3 and 4, where you've got 14 degrees. Only 3 degrees difference, but it does make quite a difference.
And don't forget about the progressive banking added to the trial as well. On top of the 4 degrees of banking down the back straight away. But before we look towards your championship standings, let's talk about our sponsors. First, tonight's race sponsor. Their series sponsor, in Diecast Kings, your home for the best selection of NHRA and NASCAR diecast cars at diecastkings.com. Once again, diecastkings.com. You can also find them at Facebook at Diecast King. Tonight's sponsor for tonight's round is the iRacing Flea Market, the best place to go for buying and selling sim racing equipment. Hosting the largest sim racing buy-sell group with over 20K members. Be sure to join and look around today. iRacing Flea Market, the #1 sim racing page on Facebook. This series is also sponsored by Road Trip Transport. Whether a tractor or a truck or anything in between, we can move it. Specializing in all kinds of flatbed freight. Call Road Trip Transport at 251-525-7429. You can also find them at Facebook at facebook.com/road-trip-transport-inc. This series also sponsored by ButtKicker. ButtKicker products include incredible immersion and realism for every game. Feel every nuance and truly put yourself in the driver's seat to feel what you've been missing. Go to the ButtKicker SpeedwaySports.com. Let's take a look at what you may have missed with the championship battle so far, where it's Richard Regan Jr. in control of the points lead by just 6 points over his teammate James O'Brien and Bradley Hawley from Winnebago Jelly Rolls Racing. Joshua Daniels rounds out the top 3, putting 3 of the top 4 spots, I should say, in AthleteBooker.com eSports control. Danny Cervantes rounds out the top 4 overall and 5th in driver standings with 16 points back. Now for the team standings, AthleteBooker.com eSports has won every race so far this season with a combined 7 top 5s and 11 top 10s and 2 poles. That's allowed them to get a 58-point lead over Winnebago Jelly Rolls Racing as a unit, with SGE eSports, Car Ramrod, and Riding Shotgun Rangers rounding out the top 5. Entering tonight in the team standings, 11 different organizations have hit the track in 2020 Season 3. And as these drivers practice the restarts for this evening, let's take a look at your race details, Christian.
So round 5 of 10 tonight, marking the halfway point in the season, an 85-lap race. So it shouldn't really be anything other than a one-stop if the race does go green. Fixed setup as always in the PRL series. No fast repair and a 24 incident limit. And I think this is really going to come down to how clean the initial race start is and if we get any cautions later on. And that's really going to determine the kind of race that we see here tonight, because track position is such a big factor now on this racetrack.
Talk more about that in detail in just a moment, but are you interested in advertising with GSRC? Our channel's 1 million monthly global impressions are a great way to get your branding seen by a diverse audience. Follow the link in the description for this broadcast tonight on YouTube to learn more about the opportunities with the Global SimRacing Channel. As these drivers continue to work their way around the circuit, practice has been going on for nearly 3 hours. And they started off in sunset. It's now to full pitch black darkness, almost 10 p.m. Insim time on July the 11th. The track temperature 70 degrees Fahrenheit, partly cloudy skies, 76 degrees is the air temp, humidity around 59% as well, so fairly on the cool side. For comparison's sake, for some of the NIS Opens, for example, Christian, they've been around the 85-degree range.
Yeah, it's a pretty cold track temperature obviously here, especially in the day. We usually see very, very high track temperatures, so a lot of grip out there right now. And as you can see, obviously, this practice restart they've done, everybody's slowly migrating to the bottom, but you can make the top work for a couple of laps. But if you get stuck out there, it's the same story we've seen at a lot of racetracks where you really do start to go backwards.
And we talked a bit before tonight, this is a very difficult racetrack now with the changes, because before, the best way I could describe how this track drove with this high downforce package was it felt like the low downforce package, with the way the bumps forced you to slow down and roll the car in the corner. Now with the smoother surface and the increased banking in 1 and 2 especially, it's completely changed how you drive the racetrack. Yeah,
this is one of those interesting ones where we saw with the Charlotte rescan, the track actually got much harder because it's not been resurfaced, and it's actually got a lot rougher, and that's more of a challenge now, which is a good thing in my opinion. Whereas this track has kind of gone the opposite way. The old version was very, very rough, and as you say, it was very difficult to get around. You had to slow the car down a lot in the mid corner because you simply just didn't have the grip. Whereas now, it's almost like the old version of Charlotte, where it's just so fast.
So how do you try and adapt to that, especially with the pack? Because in some cases, mind you, Christian, dirty air has been a big factor with this version of Kentucky throughout the week on the official service.
I think it's really difficult, and I think it really comes down to track position. Obviously, the leader has quite an advantage here. It'll be very, very difficult to pass late on in the run. I've seen a couple of guys getting loose around about corner exits, so looks like with this setup, maybe keeping the rear tires on it is a little bit of a factor. So we'll have to see how that plays out, especially over a long run. But I think it's really just going to come down to what you can do on that initial race start and what you can do to keep your tires in good shape for that first long run.
As you can see right now, many drivers still working their way through the pack in practice. Richard Regan Jr. the quickest in the session overall with a span of the 2.5+ hours. 29.686 after Acosta, Danny Cervantes, Mark Kalin, James O'Brien rounded out the top 5 throughout the practice. This is a home race though for the driver who's 4th in the overall session speed. Kalin from Louisville, Kentucky, looking to try and get his first top 10 of the season after showing flashes of speed so far, Christian. He only had one top 10, yes, last season in a pole. This might be one of his best chances yet to finally break through this season.
Yeah, definitely. And we've seen before Mark Kellen's had some pretty standout performances, so he can definitely perform towards the top end of the field. It just seems like it's a little bit inconsistent, if he doesn't mind me saying, but tonight is obviously looking really rather good. And in this practice restart, he's got himself up into what is effectively a 4th place, and he's left the guys behind him.
And on top of that as well, he was, in terms of drivers who put a 20-lap run in, there were 6 total. He was the second quickest with a 31.277 on average over that 20-lap span. Pat Harvey was the quickest in that regard with a 32 flat. The qualifying about to get underway for the virtual Kentucky Speedway. 5 minutes, 2 laps solo around this racetrack. And with, again, the difficulties of the circuit and the looseness of how the car can be, how difficult do you think this qualifying is going to be, knowing you need to be as quick as possible while making sure you don't spin out the car?
Yeah, obviously, with it being the rescan and with it being so smooth, the gaps between drivers are going to be rather small, as you say. A little bit of consideration in terms of grip out there, but I think they've got a little bit of an advantage being able to get 2 laps in, where the 2 laps might. The second lap is probably going to be the quickest, so the first lap they're going to have a little bit of a chance to feel it out, and I think that makes it a little bit easier at these kind of racetracks, but obviously it means that second lap is all the more critical.
Looking at Brandon T. Adams, he's had a decent past couple weeks, and the Adams family racing machine looking to start off this qualifying. He's one of the first drivers on the track. The Texan region-based driver looking to try and have a clean finish as well, though, after getting involved in some contact at the Brickyard.
You see he's on his first lap right now, running just around the middle of the racetrack, so it looks like he's definitely going for that second lap as being his fast lap.
30.406 to start off the session. Bradley Hawley, one of the quickest drivers on the longer run in the session, coming across the stripe with a 29.8 to start off his first lap. Danny Cervantes with a 29.9, and all of a sudden, there's already nearly half a second difference between the first lap to the bottom of the pole to the top of the pole.
Quite a different approach as Abner Acosta runs a 29.841.
Second lap across this time for Brandon T. Adams, a 29.9. Want to touch upon Acosta, though, as Slade crosses stripe for his second lap. Acosta was involved with a black flag situation after being inside the top 3, got shuffled down the running order, Christian, to the end of the top 20. As a result, coming to the final restart. That put him in a tough points position where he could have entered tonight in the top 3 without drops. He's now 7th.
Yeah, and obviously that's a big blow to him, as we've seen in the past in this series with that drop round. Just help you out a little bit, but if you've had a bad race and you've already taken it, 10 races isn't really a lot of races to make those points back. So that's obviously he's up against it with that.
He's currently the fastest driver on the track. Mike Knight, one of the quickest drivers in the daytime in practice, up to P5. Scotty Johnson across the stripe gets himself up to P12, meanwhile, with a 30.323. Just about every single driver is on the track right now, setting times, including Adam Zemke. His second lap moves him up to P3 at 29.8 all of a sudden. One of the best second laps we've seen so far.
Yeah, there does seem to be a split approach. Obviously, some drivers elected to go for the fast lap right off the bat, and others have gone for the double lap strategy, and it seems to be working either way, really. It's just a case of whether you can actually get the performance out of the car on whichever lap you choose to make your fast lap.
Kalen coming across the stripe this time in P11. Make that P10 as he crashes at the end of his second lap. Charles Sumner up to P5, one of his best qualifying runs. The man on the pole now, Richard Regan Jr., the first driver in qualifying to going to the 7s. He was the only driver in practice to be in the 6s as well, as no one else has been able to reach him quite yet in these final minute or so on the clock.
And that's a sizable advantage he's got around here, especially for how full throttle the track is. To have over a quarter of a tenth on the field, it's going to be tough.
And we talked a bit with Adam Young, one of the riding shotgun drivers. He talked about how he felt comfortable with the setup, was pretty good overall. It's a fairly competitive one. It's going to be interesting, though, which drivers are able to adapt the best to it without burning up the tires by having to go nearly full throttle all around the racetrack tonight.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and that's where the restart's really going to be critical, both in terms of getting your initial track position and then, as you say, keeping the tires on the race car. Because if you push too hard trying to get initial track position in say the first 5 laps of the run, it's really going to hurt you later on, and you're going to be the driver that's going backwards. And speaking of Adam Young, it looked like he went for the first lap as kind of a warm-up lap, and then he's had a mistake on his second lap. So right now he's set a time of 31.343, so looks like he's going to be bringing up the tail end of the field.
Pellin, meanwhile, on his second lap, smacks the wall hard in the Goldfish machine and ends off the 21 drivers who put in times in the 24 machines who brought their cars to Kentucky tonight. Let's take a look at how they'll start for tonight's action from Kentucky Speedway. On the pole tonight, Richard Regan Jr. once more with the 29.781, with Abner Acosta starting in P number 2 for Level Motorsports. Bradley Holly starts in P3 with Zemke starting in 4th. Charles Sumner rounds out the top 5 with the 29.876, with Danny Cervantes rounding out the top 6. Row 4 features James O'Brien, who won a race earlier this season for his team. He'll start alongside Brandon T. Adams, his best qualifying run of 2020 Season 3. Adam Shane starts off in 9th, and Mike Knight rounds out the top 10.
Points contender, just missing outside of the top 10 is Joshua Daniels. He'll be rolling off in 11th. Alongside him is Robert Bisso Jr. in 12th. Mark Kellen, the driver we talked about in pre-race, he's back there in 13th. He'll be looking to move forwards. Pat Harvey, the driver with the fastest 20 lap average, will be starting 14th. Then we have Brett Adams, Colton Lane in 15th and 16th. Josh Slade in 17th and 18th. And then Scotty Johnson and Viz Pellin in 19th and 20th.
Rounding out the drivers in the field, Adam Young 9/10 off the nearest car, rounds up times put in, while David Wilson Jr., Jeffrey Ford, and Chad Brown round out tonight's entries here from Kentucky. Once again, to remind you, tonight's distance, 127.5 miles, 85 laps, or 1 hour time limit. Turns 1 and 2 banking 17 degrees, turns 3 and 4 14 degrees, with progressive banking down the tri-oval from 8 to 10 degrees. The fuel window, though, is going to be one of the potential interesting marks here, Christian, because drivers have been able to save as long as 68 laps in some of the official races throughout the week, meaning the green light to make it to the end of the race could be as soon as lap 12 if there was a caution around that point.
Yeah, obviously the fuel window is very, very wide, and that allows some interesting strategy options. In the past in the series, obviously we've seen some drivers go for some very aggressive undercuts. I think we might see that again tonight, especially with some drivers in the back. Or we might see some drivers elect to stay out as long as possible in the hope of a late race yellow. But either strategy is obviously never the optimum. It's always a gamble on when that yellow is going to come out, or if that yellow is going to come out.
And a majority of the yellows, mind you, at this track throughout the week across the service have been the differences on tire life cycles. Question's going to be if it carries over to tonight. But your keys to victory tonight, Christian, if you want to be able to celebrate here in the Bluegrass State.
It's absolutely got to be track position, as we've talked about so much tonight already. Track position is absolutely key on any of these new repaved tracks. So if you can be out in the lead like Richard Regan Jr. is, and you can keep control of the race after the first couple of laps on a restart, it's going to be really, really difficult to get past you.
Field making its way out of turn 4. Field in control of the iRacing pace car. Flagmen ready up at the start and finish line. Richard Regan Jr. in control of the field. As the green flag is waving, we're underway from Kentucky.
Very long haul, but he's caught out a couple of people in the mid-pack there. We saw the 42 Adam Zemke have a really slow start. Everybody behind him had a checkup, and now we've got a record of 1.
Spinning around as Brad Adams turned around. Caution is out. Already into turn 1. They went 3-4 wide heading into the corner as Adams got hooked right across the nose of the 68.
You see there, the 43 ducks to the outside of enters at 25, and then elects to stay up there, but just all behind him, everybody's stacking up.
Mind you, the restart box is very deep here. You see where the restart zone pattern rather is. And it just, I think, again, as you said, bottled everyone up. There was already apologies from Robert Bisson Jr. in the 3 car on that checkup.
Well, one thing that you've got to remember is that the spotter isn't actually, for the drivers using the iRacing spotter, he's not actually talking to you until a couple of seconds after the race has started. So I could totally understand how that scenario unfolded, because you don't know that there's a 3 wide at that point. I think it takes about 15 seconds for the spotter to be enabled. So just really unfortunate that obviously we had that checkup and then everybody was trying to funnel down into the turn.
Several drivers now having to come down to pit with damage. Mike Knight with significant damage. Front end demolished on Brett Adams. Brandon Adams also involved. Pat Harvey, one of the quickest drivers in practice, demolished. Coulter Lane with a crushed in front nose. Bisson Jr. also electing to come down after getting smacked in the back end of the race car. So about 17th on back has elected to come down to pit after the first caution flag of the race. One driver didn't make the start apparently, in Jeffrey Ford. That caution bailed him out to get the wave around.
Yeah, obviously a lot of cars there and with heavy damage right off the bat. So the 23 Brett Adams, he's definitely not going to be anywhere near racing pace with that car.
Now that the first start's out of the way, though, it gets fairly interesting how the rest of this race flows. These are long pace laps, yes, to be able to think about the strategy. But how do you plot this out as a driver tonight to try and be as efficient as you can on the starts, to get as many spots as you can without heating up the tires?
It's really difficult, and it's a challenge that everybody faces throughout the field, because obviously the deeper you are in the field, the more it strings out over the run, and it's kind of almost more important to get the positions at that point, because then you have some breathing room to work with, and you don't have such a large gap to try and run down to the leaders. Obviously, if you want to catch them, you've got to somehow find a way of running faster without hurting your tires as much. So we tend to see drivers inside the top 5 of these sort of racetracks, tracks like Kansas. They'll kind of just stay there the whole night, because it's so hard to really have any advantage over them if you're in the mid pack.
Is there anything you can really do then to try and break out of that bubble?
The main thing is obviously pit strategy on a long green flag run. You can really maximize the pit entry and exit, and that'll gain you a little bit. Obviously, if you're around cars that you've kind of been stuck around, you can do something different. You can undercut them. You can actually try and stay out a little bit longer, just so that then when you catch them the second time, you've got more of a tire advantage and the pass is a little bit easier. The biggest thing though is really making a correct decision when a yellow comes out on, say, a situation like this, where obviously this was pretty easy scenario to work with. We only did half of a corner, so nobody's going to pit. But say you did 1-2 laps, there's obviously a good way of gaining some track position there if you elect to stay out and some other drivers come down. We've seen in the past in this league where drivers give up track position and they never get it back, because the race runs yellows to the end, or the tire advantage isn't what they thought it was going to be, and they just get trapped in the back. So it's really about making the right decision, picking when you stay out, when a yellow comes out, and then when you have to come down for a set of tires.
Drivers getting ready to double up, it appears, as the pace car coming across the stripe. These are longer pace laps, as they'll go another lap or so around. So these are lengthy here of note, at least 3 to 4 on average pace laps here at Kentucky. Let's take that opportunity to talk about some of the drivers you feel this track kind of suits. You mentioned Richard Regan Jr., for example. Who else, based on what you've seen driver style-wise, this track could fit tonight?
Well, Pat Harvey was going to be one of the guys that I was going to be keeping an eye on, but obviously he's picked up significant damage right at the very beginning of the race, so it's going to be difficult for him to really do anything from this point forwards. I'm really going to be keeping an eye on Abner Acosta, though. Obviously, we saw earlier in the season he had some good long run pace, just about missed out on a race win. So we're going to be keeping an eye on him, see if he can hold on to the back of Richard Regan Jr. As always, we've got Bradley Holly up inside the top 5. He'll be a contender. And yeah, in terms of other drivers, Joshua Daniels started a little bit further back. He's already up 3 spots in 8th. We're keeping an eye on him as well.
One thing to note as well, the last time this series came here was in 2019. That was in their season 13 at the time, called campaign in the summer of 2019. It was Whataback Racing's J.R. Smith who took home the victory. In the Truck Series race this past week, it just so happened to be Thomas Sink who took home the victory. Paints various different Cup Series schemes for trading paints. He just so happens to be a Whataback Racing driver as well. And what was his first career victory? It's been a Whataback Racing dominated track in the history of this series the past couple of years, Christian. Do you see that happening again, or do you continue to see potentially Athlete Booker's momentum continue into tonight?
I really think it's going to be extremely difficult to beat Richard Regan Jr. tonight. I think something's going to happen. It's going to have to cycle him back into the mid pack, and that's going to really be the opportunity to build a bit of an advantage over him. But with him being in the lead, I just see it being really, really difficult to get by him. He's been such a fast driver when he's in control of the race. It's always really difficult to kind of work an angle to get around him.
As you can see, 1 to go signal is out on the track. Regan Jr. Acosta, Holly Sumner, the top 4, O'Brien, Shane, along with Zemke, along with Daniels, Kalen, Cervantes round out the top 10. Of note, after that trouble, Daniels jumped up from 11th to 8th, Kalen up from 13th to 9th on the racetrack. Drivers already been warned over the radio to be careful after the quick first caution of this race, coming to the start of lap number 7. Once again, it is the AthleteBooker.com eSports machine of Richard Regan Jr. in control of the field. Let's try this again, shall we? As the pace car is off, here comes Holly. As Regan Jr. guns it, we're back on our way.
A much earlier jump by Regan Jr. this time. Spread the pack out rather than keeping them bunched up.
And a massive jump. Already almost half a second distance between him and second. Holly up to P2. O'Brien following the choo-choo train along the bottom side to try and fight for P3.
We'll get Acosta stuck on the top side, further back in the pack. Joshua Daniels is actually stuck on the top side as well.
Shane also stuck on the top line as well behind that machine. Also seen Scotty Johnson stuck on the top. First lap under green, led by Regan Jr. Gap has already shrunk down to just 3/10 with that big gap in the draft.
That's something that we always see at these kind of racetracks. It's very difficult for the leader to get away in the first couple of laps because the draft effect is so strong. You just pull everybody along with you down the straights.
As you can already tell, though, most of the field finding the way to the bottom. There's the different lines, though, on how some of these drivers take that exit at turn 4, which could be crucial. Some take it very wide, it seems, Christian, all the way to the wall. Others almost try and go to the middle line and then arcing immediately down towards the yellow line.
Yeah, and that's an area that's actually a really big influence on how you get off the corner as well. And that's where you're going to see differences in terms of exit speed between drivers and where you're possibly going to see some passes form. So obviously with that variance in line, there will be a difference in exit speed. And if you're close enough, it's going to work with you or against you, and it might give you an opportunity.
We're already down to a couple tenths of a second between Regan Jr. and Holly up at the point. Costa falling behind. O'Brien the quickest out of anybody. The fastest lap set by Holly, though, in the race with a 28.835 with the draft. And already it looks like, it seems, Christian, Holly's trying to find a way to get some clean air, it seems, for the corner entry at least here.
Yeah, and it looks like actually through the pack, there's a lot of drivers struggling with a similar thing. They all look like they're turning into the corner expecting a level of grip that just simply isn't there right now. And then you see in the middle, the car washes up, and right now we've only got one side-by-side battle. And it appears it's the 34 Josh Slade who is just permanently stuck on the outside right here.
Currently, this is for 10th spot with that particular position. That's a +7 for Slade, by the way. But able to power his way along the outside to get clear. Now, the interesting thing with the top line, though, Christian, is you can still defend on it. particularly in 3 and 4. It's just a matter of it's not the line you want to run, especially on the long run.
Yeah, and that's another factor in kind of how you essentially race the racetrack. We've seen in the past that a lot of tracks, the top line is a very good defensive line, but as you say, it will really slow down a pair of cars if they're running side by side like that, because obviously the way the top line works as a defensive line is you're killing the momentum of the bottom line on the corner exit, and then it kind of traps them into a bit of a feedback loop where if they come off the corner slow, they go down the straightaway slow, then they're tight to the next corner, and it just kind of slows you down more and more if you're stuck on that bottom side. But obviously the top line isn't the fast line, so both cars drop away from the group ahead of them.
The groupings, O'Brien looking to jump up in his grouping. Getting a run this time on the bottom side. Costa stuck on the top side. This is for third spot.
It's a good move by O'Brien there. You saw him on the exit of 4, just able to keep the car lower, get a little bit more exit speed. Costa doesn't fight it really at the beginning of the race. So early on, it's just gonna hurt him and hurt his tires to really fight that move.
Absolutely. Already everyone's slipping and sliding up. Compare that to Charles Sumner behind, who doesn't have as much of a dirty air effect, with being about 5-10 car lengths behind this battle. He's been able to arc it a little bit lower on the corner exits compared to what this choo-choo train in the top 4 has been doing. Here's a look on board, for example.
Yeah, and that's a really big thing. It doesn't seem like it so much just looking at everybody from the outside, but if you can just come off the corner just a little bit lower than the car ahead of you, it means that you can have a little bit less wheel input, which is a little bit less right front temperature, and that really will show up on a long run.
Difference is, though, Sumner's running 30.8s. The leader's running 30.5s and 6s. And is setting the fastest lap overall on the track in P8 with a 30.538. Several drivers already up, +7 as we talked about a bit. Slade was one of them a few moments ago. Finally, Caitlin got by him. But Scotty Johnson and Adam Young are also +7. They're slowly approaching the top 10 themselves here.
Scotty Johnson was in that danger zone of where we saw that wreck happen, but it looks like he managed to get through it unscathed, so obviously a good game for him as a result of that incident. +7. He's got, it looks like Colton Lane to be behind him. I'm pretty sure Colton Lane did pick up some damage, but it looks like he's got some good pace right now.
Take a look on board with Lane. And you see that difference we talked about a bit. Some of the drivers trying to get as close as they can to the yellow line on the bottom side. And Slade is now struggling big time. He nearly smacked the wall, Christian, out of turn 4.
Yeah, you see that's where the line is so crucial, because he was only a little bit too high, but obviously thought he was going to get up to the wall, so he had to lift off and immediately lose his 2 positions just because he had no exit speed and no speed down the front stretch.
And the crazy thing, though, is on the last driver in that group, in Adam Young, he said he put his first practice laps in that riding shotgun machine in during this practice session 10 minutes prior to the start of qualifying. His car's now up to 12th. Check that 13th, a +8.
Yeah, it had a pretty rough qualifying. Obviously, made a mistake on his second lap, so he didn't get a representative lap in, but looks like he's found some good race pace at this point, and he's moving his way up towards the top 10.
Only 4.6 seconds behind the race leaders, coming to the start of lap 20 this time. Speaking of those, let's go up towards the front. You can see still single filed out, separated by half a second in this train. They've ran away from the rest of the field by 1.1 seconds already.
Charles Sumner is back in that 5th spot, not able to hold on. He's now got Adam Zemke for company. But this top 4 are all just riding along together right now. You see Richard Regan Jr. with a little bit of an advantage, but definitely not breaking away from this group of 3 behind him.
It almost looks like, though, O'Brien's found something. He's over the back end of Holly in the corners, especially in Apex. It seems like he's found something to get an extra bit of cut, at least, for this part of the run.
Yeah, it definitely looks like he's coming off the corners a little bit lower, and as I said before, that's going to pay off, especially on that long run. And we've seen this before from O'Brien. He'd be extremely strong in a race situation.
Something to think about too. This is a fixed series, yes, but there was a lot of preparation for the team he's a part of, as well as his development program. Probably oversaw the eSports and his underground racing. He was essentially a test driver trying to tune some of the setup for Kentucky throughout the week.
Yeah, and obviously that's a big factor. There's a lot of laps of the track, so he really knows what kind of needs to be done. And right now you can see he's all over the back of Holly. I don't think it's going to be too long before he gets by.
Holly's even out about 3/10 behind. O'Brien still trying to find his way on by. Diamonds the corner on turn 2. Just can't get that momentum quite yet with everyone just near dead even speed. It is, however, like you said, Holly's falling back. It seems like that dirty air is affecting him more so than what O'Brien's been able to drive up these corner exits.
Yeah, you can see obviously Holly not able to stick to the back of Regan Jr., but behind him he's got O'Brien and Acosta who are right behind him. The difficult part in a scenario like this is we see O'Brien get to the bottom and now he's definitely under Holly, is that you can really hurt your own tires in a situation like this trying to get around the car ahead of you, because you start moving around the racetrack and it's a strange thing to think as to why you're moving around the racetrack. You've caught the car ahead of you because your line is faster. Why are you changing it? As we now see that O'Brien actually got a full run off the exit of 4 and now he's got Acosta to his outside.
This is one of the difficult parts when it comes to trying to pass at Kentucky. If you don't get the pass down to the bottom, some will try and take advantage of the top. Acosta does just that. He's back up to P3 once again.
Yeah, that's the difficulty, as you say, especially with this package, that you kind of only have one chance. If you're in a group of cars and you try and make the pass and it doesn't come off, generally you get stuck out in a line that you don't want to be in and everybody just trains by you. So it's really critical. If you try and make the pass, you have to get it done.
Here's the thing too, that's allowed Regan Jr. to just run away now by 0.8 because they lost a few tenths trying to keep side by side in that corner. Now it's going to take a few laps to get back up to Regan Jr. at this point because they ran in the 30.8s those 2 laps. Jr. in the 31.6s.
Yeah, and that's obviously exactly what he wants to see. He wants to see as much side-by-side action behind him as possible because, as you say, it slows you down so much. Obviously there we saw the top line car had the advantage, able to pull the pass off, but even in that situation was going so much slower than running the preferred line on your own.
The thing though, these two gained 2/10 down the back straight away. Acosta finding some pace once again, trying to push the back end of Holly back up to the rear end of Regan Jr. 32 flat this time for the 46, 31.7s for second and third, a 31.8 for fourth.
So the draft effect is very powerful to gain that much just pushing into the car, and that's where it's a difficult situation for Acosta now, because obviously you saw O'Brien try and pass Holly, wasn't able to pull the pass off, and that's how Acosta got the run to take that position.
Acosta still trying to peel his way up to the top line, it seems, but Zemke's up to 5th. Charles Sumner now losing pace as Joshua Daniels and Denny Cervantes have now found their way up the track. These two, the 77 and the 25, Christian, are quicker than the race leaders.
Yeah, and the 77's had a long way to go. Obviously started the race in 11th, already up to the 6th at this point, so he's really making some good progress. He's just looking up for that battle in second place. Acosta got to the inside of Holly, not able to pull off the move, having to drop back in behind him.
Towards this grouping for second. And all of a sudden, the time advantage swung back the other way as another layer of that onion, known as the tire model, has peeled off of Holly's car, it seems, to drop all the time he had gained the past couple laps back the other direction. 3/10 lost last time.
Yeah, at this point, Holly's really just trying to hang on until that first stop or until a yellow comes out, because he clearly doesn't have the pace on his own to challenge for the race win at this point. definitely looks like Acosta and O'Brien behind him are quicker. O'Brien's actually fallen back a little bit, and I'm surprised to see that because he was obviously all over the back of Holly trying to get the pass done.
At the same time, though, that's also down to the process, partly, I think, Christian, too, of you almost don't want to get too close, right? And push up the track once you get to somebody's bumper. You'd rather have a couple car lengths just to give you a cushion.
Yeah, that's really true. And the other thing is that you can, even without the aero effect consideration, you can actually be too close to a car. Especially if you run up on them in the middle of the corner, you have to check up. You lose all your momentum, as we see. Costa looks like he's finally got the job done. Not quite, but I think he's going to clear him on the entry to 3 here.
Holly's still trying to defend it a bit hard. Just stabs the gas enough. Acosta makes contact. Holly's up into the fence. Slides around, just saves it. And now Holly with significant damage after that contact.
Outside, and Acosta was obviously on the bottom, saw Holly get a run, tried to gas it up, but Holly was really trying to pinch down there. And see, this is where this kind of racing with this style of package is incredibly frustrating, because I've been in both scenarios and neither driver wants to do that, but Acosta's seen the opportunity to get the pass done, and he knows that if he doesn't clear Holly by corner exit, he's going to get pulled back and Holly's going to just zoom right by him on the top side. But equally, Holly knows that too, so that's why he's trying to pinch him down, and that's really nobody's fault. But unfortunately, Holly with massive right side damage.
There was a good war phrasing that described that here in Kentucky this week, used by one of my fellow team members, where it was described as you can either let somebody go or lose 5 seconds. As you can tell, Holly's now lost already nearly 5 seconds from the damage, and the drivers who work together just so happen to have O'Brien in second and Acosta in third.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the unfortunate result of that scenario. Obviously, Holly is now, I mean, he really took the fence down with that hit, so he's definitely going to be way off pace now. Obviously, Acosta looks like he didn't pick up any damage from it, but both second and third lost a significant amount of time to Regan Jr. They were at 1 point half second behind. They're now 1.7 and 1.9 seconds behind. So they've got a lot of work to do to run that down. And imagine that Holly's going to be pretty unhappy with how that worked out. But that really is a reality of racing on this package. That's the style of racing that this high downforce car promotes, and that's the result that you get from it, unfortunately.
Pit window is open. Chad Brown already came down this past time by. Zemke coming down this time in the 42. So everyone's ducking down. And this is a difficult pit lane in that the speed limit's only 45 miles an hour, and there's a chance you can slide on that pit entry. And don't forget, with the apron, you can push up the track and go across the blue line too early and get a penalty from that.
Yeah, obviously the blue line is pretty far around the corner on exit, so really have to keep the car low for a very long time. And then with the entry, the pit road entry, the cone is quite far forwards, and it's pretty flat down there, so it is very easy to speed. You have to be quite conservative on entry at this track, more so than you do a similar kind of visual layout, say, as Las Vegas.
And that was Zemke, we mentioned, who just pit. Brown's also pit. 47 laps to go this time. The difference involved already 2 seconds flat. From fresh tires to old tires, these drivers are trying to chug along on. Acosta, you're on board with him still, trying to get second back, falling in the draft. Was quicker last time than the race leader, but only by a couple 100ths. It's a 1.8 second gap between first and second.
It's going to take a lot for these pair of drivers to run down the leader now at this stage. Obviously almost at half distance, and 1.8 seconds might not sound like a lot, but in the context of oval racing, that's really a significant distance. It's very rare that you ever gain a 10th a lap on a car, so that's going to take at least minimum 18 laps to run down that gap.
P9, meanwhile, is starting to shuffle a bit because that's where Holly is. Just led by one of his fellow teammates, went a part of the Wonderback Racing banner, right, driving the rescue graphics machine, Colton Lane. And Shane also making the pass this past lap or so. So Hawley, he's now about a full second off the pace and back to P11 in what may be his drop race on the season.
You see Holly extremely slow down the straight relative to other cars as we check back on Danny Cervantes and Charles Sumner here.
They already had to let by Chad Brown in his fresher tires, but they've also started a single file out of a little bit. This could be one of the groupings we may see that undercut strategy we talked about because it can be very powerful here at Kentucky.
Yeah, and obviously we see that Joshua Daniels has kind of worked his way up through the field and he's done a great job to recover from that 11th place start up into 4th right now, and that's a genuine 4th place. Nobody ahead of him is pit. There's nobody to cycle around. So he's got a large distance down to 3rd, though, obviously over 3 seconds, so it's going to be a tall order for him to run that down, but still, looks like he's got a commanding advantage over those behind him right now.
Crazy statistic when it comes to Joshua Daniels, by the way. He scored 37 points in the past 3 rounds. Yes, 37 points each of the past 3 races in that 77. As several drivers elected to come down this time. Some of the Adams family racing machines came down night this time by. Also hearing calls from Mark Halen and co. So the pit window's now opening up for a majority of the field, including some of the leaders.
Yeah, so just keeping an eye on this battle. I thought that Daniels would actually now get away with some clean track, but it looks like Cervantes has actually got the better of him right here down into 3. And at the tail end of this fight, just moving his way in, is Scotty Johnson all the way up into 7th from 19th.
And Cervantes getting loose off the corner, just able to save it. That could have been trouble as the leaders did dunk down that time by. Regan Jr. and O'Brien both came to the pit lane. And one thing to think about, it can be fairly dark at that part of the racetrack. It was updated since the start of the week, but it can be difficult to see the exact position of the pit signs here at Kentucky with the lighting.
Yeah, obviously the pit road is a little bit of a curve shape as well, so that doesn't help you. Regan Jr. got into his box pretty well, it looks like, though.
He's already up on the left side tires. Daniels coming down this time. Charles Sumner, though, gained a ton of time on his pit entry to jump back into the battle for what could be a top 5 spot. He entered side by side, Christian, just on the other end of the pit lane to Daniels.
Yeah, and he had to really check up there, so I'm wondering if he was worried about speeding. As you say, he entered completely side by side with Daniels, but then really checked up and dropped in behind him.
You can gain up to 2 seconds if you send it hard enough on the pit entry and don't get speeding. Regan Jr., though, already out of the pit lane. Here's the look at Acosta's times. Pit lane delta for Regan Jr., about 40+ seconds. Acosta rounding out of 43.1 in the lane. Did have the 1-lap overcut, though, compared to the race leader, as Regan Jr. already zipping by on the outside.
Yeah, and that's going to work out quite well for Acosta, though, obviously. Looks like he's managed to maintain that gap that he had with that 0.3 of a second advantage he had is kind of negated that 1 lap of tire advantage that Regan Jr. would have had over him.
So Danny Cervantes, one of the drivers, trying to stretch it out. Robert Bisson Jr., who was also in that window, just came down. Jeffrey Ford is the other driver. But it's currently Zemke who is in front of Richard Regan Jr. with his couple lap undercut after pitting around lap 35 for the net race lead.
And that's a good illustration of how powerful that undercut is. Obviously, we saw and you see right there, the Cervantes pitting with everybody zipping by him on the top side.
So that was to get Regan Jr. and co. back on the lead lap. Regan Jr. also making the pass on track for the net race lead as Cervantes now rolls into the pit lane. So gonna lose at least some significant amount of time with the couple lap overcut. But there's also, I think, it's worked in some cases, Christian, the overcut here, but it also has that evening out point that was similar to what was seen from the series last week at the Brickyard.
Yeah, obviously Indianapolis was a track where, as you say, the tires just really kind of flattened out once you get about 25 laps into the run. So you really had to make up everything that first 25, and if you didn't, then that was it. You know, like you were just where you were was where you were, and as you say, it's a little bit of a similar situation here. So really that strategy only works if you can guarantee that you're going to come out in a really clean segment of track and just be able to hammer out those times. As we see a car having a big issue on the front stretch. Not sure exactly who it was. I think it was Yves Pelland in the 7.
Yeah, Pelland getting loose on the front straightaway this past time buying the 7 after nearly snapping it right across Brandon Adams' car. Was able to save it. We stay green after this.
A huge moment. Obviously, he didn't get away with it without significant contact with the wall, but kept it straight. So no yellow.
He's right now one of the last cars running. Jose Medina 2 laps down as the lead. Changing hands, Jeffrey Ford trying to stretch it. Losing the point, Regan Jr. back up in the lead by more than 2.5 seconds over Acosta. Gained a second in the pit stop cycle.
Acosta has obviously got quite a significant margin to run down if he wants to challenge Richard Regan Jr. And that's always a tall order because that's obviously going to take a lot out of his tires to try and do that. And you've really got to manage the kind of expectation. You can't use everything immediately because you'll see a gain and you'll think it's working and you think that you're going to easily get the guy, but then it'll flatten out and start trending the other way if you take too much too soon. So if he does have a chance at this, he's going to have to kind of slowly work his way up there and then maybe have a chance within the last 5 to 10 laps. But I think it's going to be difficult with Regan Jr. out there in clean track right now.
He did gain a couple tenths last time. He's 3 tenths quicker a lap, but the interesting thing again is going to be trying to close up the gap without burning up the tires. You should note that Zemke up to net P3, Acosta up to 2nd. O'Brien also made a pass on Jeffrey Ford this past time by the front straightaway to take back P4. And it's a gamble for the 95 of Jeffrey Ford right now to stay out like he has. Remember, had to take a wave under the first caution. He can go on fuel for another 16 laps. He's trying to stretch it hard. All while others, say who have tried that overcut we talked about, like Danny Cervantes, they're deep in P11 right now.
Yeah, obviously a big track position loss with that overcut strategy. And obviously a lot of cars to pass to get back to where you were. And that's where the big danger is, because obviously if a yellow comes out, you've lost all your track position. You're going to be equalized out on tires. So it's a real long play. And a couple of things do have to go your way for it to work out.
From the back end right now with some of the cars, that's Scotty Johnson you're looking from, as down to the bottom side, there's the move for Pat Harvey with his demolished front end. Holly still off the pace with that damage on both the left and right front fenders on his Ford.
Yeah, and he's in for a rough time for the rest of the race. He desperately needs a yellow to try and get some of that fixed. He's never going to be race winning pace again, but he might at least be able to get enough fixed to challenge for the top 10. Instead, right now, he's just slowly kind of moving backwards through the field.
Just in front of them, that's where Cervantes is just past Scotty Johnson. And here's the interesting thing. It's about 5 seconds to the group he was with Joshua Daniels, Charles Sumner, and co. So there's a chance he can reel them on down, but the problem's going to be, again, will the tires last long enough to get him back into that grouping?
And that's the big question, and that's the big risk with this strategy, that you just cannot push the car too hard. You just got to have faith that it's going to work out. It's going to pull you back into contention. And if you do go too hard too early, then you're going to lose everything, because obviously you don't have the track position at this point, and it all relies on you having superior long run pace and superior overall pace at the end of the race.
Bit of a dicey scenario you see though with Scotty Johnson using lap cars as a pick. Pelland forced up to the top. Contact from the back end of Lane, and now Wilson Jr. gets through for a spot. Lane takes it back. And that got a little bit ugly.
I think Lane was really surprised at how slow Pelland was down the backstretch there. He's sort of given a pretty big shot. And Scotty Johnson was trying to obviously keep him up there to get that position. See there, Lane at the very last moment able to check up.
Yeah, he had no idea, I don't think, that was about to happen there, and damaged a little bit more of the front nose. Remember, was involved in the first caution of this race. Might take him a little while now, to say the least, though, to get the momentum back to get up to where Johnson was. He's now lost about a second in the side-by-side with Wilson Jr.
Yeah, side-by-side is really not going to help him. As you say, a little bit more nose damage on that car. Does look like it's hurting him a little bit down the straight there, but could also just be the lack of exit speed with that top line.
On the bright side, position is up for grabs right in front of them. Jeffrey Ford has already fallen to the end of the top 10. 16 seconds behind the race leader. Those tires right at the edge of their life cycle at this point. 58 laps now on the stint, including the pace laps. Maybe 9 laps at the very most before he has to dunk down.
Yeah, and that strategy is obviously really not worked out for him. He was hoping for a yellow around about probably lap 55 when he was still up inside the top 5, and obviously that hasn't happened, and now he's already been passed by those cars that pit, and now has a significant tire disadvantage. He's got to be coming down within the next probably 7 to 8 laps, with the caution taking that into account.
Remember, started at the back row of this race tonight. As you've seen as well on the side ticker, you saw Junior also making a pass now on Colton Lane. Pat Harvey also now looking to make a pass on the 60 machine. Should note Lane did have about a 2-lap overcut on some of these drivers in this group you see on screen. Now with that damage, the speed he was gaining, gone. He's now to the back end of this group after being passed in the backdrop by Harvey.
Yeah, you saw right there, even Harvey has some damage himself, but had significant straight line speed advantage over Lane, able to easily clear him down the front stretch.
Change for P5 up the road as well. Charles Sumner just made a pass on Adam Zemke. Zemke, remember, went for that massive overcut on 25 lap old tires now in this run. Went up to the race lead, led a couple laps. He's already fallen back, though, 11 seconds from where he was compared to Regan Jr. and Co.
So that's working against him at this point. That strategy works out when a yellow comes out. Really, actually, right about now, because any further loss is just going to be a net loss overall for him. So he's desperately looking for a yellow at this point of the race.
Charles Sumner desperately looking for his first top 5 as well, Christian. He's in line for that in P5 where he started this race.
Yeah, and he's doing a great job. He's having a really good run. Obviously, we saw he pit around with Joshua Daniels, and he's still out there with him right now. So the pair of these drivers having a really solid night.
It's about 10 seconds back of the leader, but did lose some ground with some of the passes with Zemke. But look at that! Cervantes has reeled them on in. He's still the quickest car on the track in the 31-1s. He's got a chance to get as high as 4th now.
Yeah, and obviously a very long play with this overcut strategy, but he's getting back to where he was, and he's going to have over 20 laps to make this pass on 2 cars, so definitely looks like it's going to work out for him.
It would still be about 6 seconds to get up to James O'Brien, who's in P number 3. But Cervantes doing a stellar job with this overcut call to get back into position for a top 5. Look at the difference in the times compared to O'Brien alone.
Yeah, you see it's starting to, well, I was actually about to say it's starting to level off a little bit, and it really kind of is. Obviously, you see there, kind of been 3/10, now moving down towards the 2/10 range. Still a significant difference, but obviously as the laps tick off, it's going to get harder and harder, and he's still got 2 cars to pass before he has that chance to try and run down James O'Brien.
Here's one of them right here. This is one of the Ramrod cars, Charles Sumner. Giving space a lot on the high side this time. The Tropicana machine staying down to the bottom, all while Cervantes gasses it up, not letting him by quite easily, but still Cervantes with the opportunity to ramp it off the corner right there to get clear.
Yeah, you see obviously a big speed advantage to be able to make that pass on the top side and clear him easily before he gets to turn 3.
Next car up, Joshua Daniels, who's looking for another top 5 on the season. That even out the time to only about 11.1 seconds back to Regan Jr., with 19 laps to go that time by. Daniels, though, was the quicker out of the drivers in that group of 31-6. 1/10 lost by Cervantes with the pass already. Has gained that back and then some down the back.
Yeah, and I think his judge is really going to stall out right around when he gets to Joshua Daniels. I don't think he's going to have enough time to make any inroads on O'Brien.
18 to go this time. Have to say, though, Cervantes having one of his best races this season. He's been inside the top 5 of the points, yes. He entered tonight in the 5th overall position, 14 points back. But this has been one of his stronger races with a chance to have one of his highest scoring points finishes of the season here.
Yeah, absolutely, and obviously started in 6th, so he's been around the top 5 really the whole night.
Car in the grass, right in front of them, it's Mark Halen. He saves it off on the bottom of the apron. We stay green. That was the 21st place car spinning off of 4.
He's coming off of 4, just had absolutely no rear grip at all. Misses the pit entry, so no penalty for that, but obviously significant time loss. And Kalen's race has kind of unraveled, and he's ended up a lap down right now.
In 21st position right now, still a decent bit in front of Helen, and he's pitting. Down to the pit lane goes Kalen, and now he's spinning. He mentioned prior to this race that he was hoping not to get bad luck that he had from the truck race. He just got a ton of it.
Yeah, obviously not what you want.
Up the road, though, still Daniels and Cervantes fighting on with 15 to go this time. Passed by the smoke puff you see on the right side of the screen, but Cervantes last time by about a 10th quicker.
Gonna get to the bumper. He's gonna have the opportunity to pull off the pass, but it does look like his momentum started to stall a little bit. So we saw him able to easily pass Charles Sumner, and it looks like this is gonna be a little bit more of a tricky pass for him to pull off.
And don't forget, you've seen that car peeling off. That was Jeffrey Ford having to come down for fuel. So now he's got a chance to be a factor in this fight if he catches up. Cervantes, though, times it up well. Daniels gives him lots of space. Cervantes up to P4.
I think that was smart by Daniels right there. He'd obviously seen Cervantes coming behind him and knew realistically that it was only a matter of time, so why fight it with so many laps still to go?
13 to go this time. Up at the front, you see, though, the interval, it's been shrinking. It started to even out a little bit, but once Regan Jr. started to reach a bit of the traffic, Acosta started chipping into the gap. It's now about balancing at 1.1 seconds. Previously, it had balanced at only 1.6.
And it has been slowly coming down. It seems to have kind of been a lap every now and again where Acosta will make a big inroad and then it'll stabilize. And then it'll take another couple laps before Acosta again takes a chunk out. And it looks like he's managing that tire advantage he's got quite well. Obviously, it was only a 1 lap advantage, but it is paying off for him at this point.
See, the past couple laps has gained time, about a 10th on lap 72, lap 73, just 4 1,000ths though. They still have some lap traffic just up the road though, which could be a factor here. Adam Young, Bradley Holly are the next cars that are up for grabs to be lapped by Regan Jr. with 11 to go at Kentucky.
Obviously, lapped cars is not what he wants to see. It's gonna cause him a little bit of distress to get around and without losing some time to Acosta behind him. Though I mean, 1 second is still doesn't sound like a lot, but it is still a significant advantage, especially at this point of the race. So he does have a little bit of breathing room to play with here.
Here's the difficult part though, Christian, with this track. It's been noticed by some. If you don't get around the traffic quickly, that dirty air can really hold you up and make it difficult to pass them. It becomes almost like a feedback loop of you want to pass them, you can't get the run because you're plowing tight. You draft up to them, you plow tight in the corner, you want to get by them, etc., etc. Those 2 cars up the road, by the way, are for position for P16. This could be a valuable one depending on if there is a caution with under 10 to go, because this would be for the lucky dog as well.
Yeah, obviously this is a pretty big fight right here. We got Adam Young. Looks like he's going to cede the position to Regan Jr.
And now a lap down, Hawley giving space in the middle of the racetrack. Not a good spot to reach the traffic though. On corner exit, Regan Jr. forced to stay low on the corner exit.
Right, you don't want to catch a car right on corner exit. Obviously had to pinch it down a little bit more with the wheel. Then having to take a tight entry into 3. Does clear Hawley. You have to remember that Acosta has to work his way past this pair of cars as well as having to contend with a much faster lapped car now about to unlap himself.
That was Mark Kalin. You seen the backdrop on the orange machine? He spent 4 laps in the pit lane getting damage repaired, and now he's zipping by these machines. On the bottom side, Acosta lost 2/10 trying to let Kalin by on the front stretch.
Yeah, see Kalin is 4 laps down right now and absolutely sent it in on the bottom into 3 and 4. A huge slide and a great save.
7 to go this time by. You can see the straight line speed still dead even with that damage, but right here, the fresher tire is able to floor it onto the corner. Regan Jr. not giving up the bottom this time. He's communicating he'll give them the space though in turn 3.
Regan Jr. gonna run the top side, allow Kalin the bottom. Kalin easily able to clear him on those fresher tires. Now Acosta's working his way past Adam Young, and this whole situation has lost Acosta a lot of time. The gap was down to just over 1 second. It's now out to nearly 1.5 seconds. Actually over 1.5 seconds at the stripe that time.
Up to almost 1.7 to be precise. Just raced some of the wrong spaces in the wrong times. And now Regan Jr. looking to say bye-bye. Coming up 5 laps to go. High five from the flagman, this time by at the stripe.
Yeah, I think that's definitely put paid to any chance that Acosta would have had. There's no real probability that he's going to run that gap down, as again, this time with Hawley kind of checking him up on the exit. Obviously, Hawley probably not in any mood to give Acosta an easy time here.
Especially after what happened with the contact, pushing up the track and he bent the right rear. That lost him an additional 0.2 of a second coming to 4 laps to go. There is a major glob of traffic though, which is fighting for position just up the road, which might be a factor for Regan Jr. coming to the white flag. It involves Adam Shane, Jose Medina, Mike Knight, Josh Slayton in this group, and Kalin also was in this group before he smacked the wall twice now down the front.
Yeah, Kalin looked like he got to this group with so much more speed than he was expecting, and now he's struggling around the top of 1 and 2. Might even be letting Richard Regan Jr. back past him.
Yeah, Kalin in the backdrop, just move to the bottom side of the racetrack. Might be pulling off to the end. He's the last car on track. But this battle you see is for 13th. They do also have Medina, who's in 23rd in this fight, though. Down on the bottom side, Knight trying to get by the 24. Slade, though, looking to try and gain more spots. Makes contact! Sliding around as Medina. He saves it. Coming to the closing stages.
A great save by Medina there, and this is exactly what Richard Regan Jr. doesn't want to see. It's been so many races where he's been comfortably the leader, and we've seen a late race yellow take the win away from him. So he does not want to see these guys fighting in front of him.
Single file down in front of him though. Slade now back to P15. Here comes Regan Jr. to lap him with 2 laps to go. And Slade looking much slower now after that contact.
Slade obviously had that moment, saw that the opportunity to pass Mike Knight is now definitely well and truly gone, and saw the race leader coming behind him, and it's just elected to kind of fall in line here.
Coming towards the white flag, this time by 1 lap to go for PRL Cup Series action from Kentucky. It's been another clinic from Richard Regan Jr. He's dominated the first half of the calendar. 3 of the 4 races so far entering tonight went his way to get W's. And now, just 1 set of corners away from doing it again to make it 4 for 5 for the 2-time defending champion. For AthleteBooker.com eSports, they go 5 for 5 as well. Richard Regan Jr. continues his domination streak. He wins it in the Bluegrass State. Acosta P2 2 seconds back. James O'Brien holds on to the top 3. Danny Cervantes and Joshua Daniels round out the top 5. And another clinic put on by Richard Regan Jr. and the AthleteBooker.com eSports machines. Again, some of the quickest cars on track, and another victory for the organization. What a season it's been, to say the very least, Christian.
Yeah, obviously we said it was going to be difficult to beat Richard Regan Jr. if he was out front. Able to control the race. Obviously, we just had that contact behind him, gave him a little bit of breathing room, and then made his pit stop. No mistakes this time, and just comes away with a race win. Again, Abner Acosta finishes second.
With that, we'll take a step aside. Post-race coverage coming up in a few moments. You're watching the Global SimRacing Channel, live from the virtual Kentucky Speedway in Sparta, Kentucky. Welcome back to the virtual Kentucky Speedway for post-race coverage of the Precision Racing League Cup Series, sponsored by iRacing, Flea Market, Diecast Kings, Road Trip Transport, and ButtKicker. It was an eventful race, to say the very least, but it was one man who dominated them all tonight. Richard Regan Jr. came away with his 4th victory in 5 races to start off 2020 Season 3, beating Abner Acosta by more than 2 seconds. James O'Brien finishes off in 3rd. Danny Cervantes and Joshua Daniels rounding up the top 5. That's all 3 of the AthleteBooker.com eSports machines inside the top 5 once again. Charles Sumner with a strong run tonight finishes in P6. Scotty Johnson, coming to 2 laps to go, did pass Adam Zemke for P7 for one of his best runs of the campaign. While Robert Bisson Jr., after being involved in the first lap incident, got back to P9. And Pat Harvey, despite having a crushed in front nose, Christian, rounded up the top 10.
And another big mover for the night, David Wilson Jr. He started in 22nd, finished just outside the top 10 and 11th, only half a second behind Pat Harvey, who was in 10th. So a really good showing by him. Colton Lamb, we saw have a couple of incidents throughout the night, picked up some damage and came home in 12th. Adam Shane and starting inside the top 10 and unfortunately comes home 13th. Mike Knight started 10th, finishes 14th, the last car on the lead lap. Josh Slade in 15th. Adam Young made up 5 spots from where he started to go from 21st to 16th. Then we have Bradley Holly finish a lap down. Obviously had that incident, picked up a lot of damage and fell all the way back to 17th spot. And then Brandon Adams in 18th, Brett Adams in 19th, and Jeffrey Ford with his very different strategy comes home in 20th.
21st spot, 2 laps down. Pellin with a night to forget after several incidents along with the outside wall. Chad Brown also had a 2-stopper for the race and finished 22nd. Medina and Kalen rounding out the entries. All drivers did make it to the checker flag outside of Kalen in his home track race. But Richard Regan Jr. again put on a clinic tonight to win his 4th race in 5 starts this season. Richard, you made it look easy tonight. How are you feeling?
Yeah, it feels good to keep continuing this momentum. Definitely wasn't easy though. Abner is a really fast guy, so he's definitely going to be a threat the whole season. So you got to keep working at it and try to find a little bit more short run pace to make up. Because he has a good long run pace, so we got to find a little bit more short run and just try to stay in front of him a little bit more.
How difficult, though, was it to balance that tonight with Kentucky, especially with the differences in the banking and the differences in the surface texture from very rough to going very smooth for this new scan of Kentucky that was released in June on the iRacing service?
Yeah, it's weird. I like the old Kentucky better because there's a lot more driver skill involved. This kind of race is like a Michigan to start out with, or like an Indy, and then it really tightens up. And it's just about hitting your marks and not hitting the apron in 1 and 2, and not drifting up too high in 3 and 4. So it's definitely tough. The track's very wide, so it's kind of forgiving. If you make a mistake, you don't always hit the wall, but you'll lose a lot of time. So yeah, I mean, I can't wait to go back to these short tracks, but yeah, it was definitely tough.
Just so happens to be in short track the next race on the campaign. To start out the second half of the season, your thoughts on going to New Hampshire, a track which has suited you and your team very well in the past?
Yeah, I like New Hampshire. It's my home track, so I want to have a good showing there. So we're gonna put in a lot of practice this coming week, and last season I was pretty good on the short tracks. We'll see how Abner does on the short tracks. I haven't seen him on the short track yet, so we'll see how that goes.
Overall, who do you want to thank for being a part of your victory tonight?
I gotta thank my teammates James O'Brien and Joshua Daniels. I gotta thank everybody at Barbadale Earnhardt Legacy Esports for all the time they put in, especially Boyd Hogan. All the time that he puts over there on the team helped me become a better driver, along with the sets and everything is awesome. I gotta thank you guys at GSRC for broadcasting, everyone at PRL for putting on the league, all the fans for watching, and I gotta thank AthleteBooker.com for coming on board with me this season. Abruzzi Racewear USA, Neonism. If you need a paint, go to facebook.com/neonism. Tell them PRL sent you. Multiple Sclerosis Society, Susan G. Coleman, and yeah, just everyone that helps support me.
Congratulations on another victory tonight. It's been domination from you the past couple seasons.
Thanks.
Now our dominating one from Richard Regan Jr. coming away with his 4th victory of the season in 5 starts. Abner Costas standing by with Christian Chowner. He was in 2nd.
Abner, another strong run to finish 2nd, and obviously we saw there was a little bit of contact between you and Bradley Holly about the midpoint of the race, and came home about two and a half seconds behind Richard Regan Jr. And it looked like at one point that you might get him, but just looked like those battles that we saw for 2nd place really kind of just slowed you guys down enough to make Richard Regan Jr. slightly out of reach.
Yeah, good evening. Yeah, I want to apologize to Bradley. I don't know if I looked at the replay. I don't know if it was completely my fault or not, but regardless, I definitely did not intend on hitting him. It seems like our cars, when they touched, they just kind of clipped on together and it just spit him out to the outside wall. So I want to apologize for that. But yeah, in regards to the race, yeah, I got past early. I thought that was my first mistake. I had to get those spots back and did burn the tires a little bit. And yeah, at the end after the pit stops, I don't know if I was just if the leader was just saving more than me or not. I'm not sure, but I was catching him very quick. But with like 6 laps to go or 5 laps to go, I burned the tires. So he just started getting away again. So yeah, I'm just happy with the finish tonight.
Yeah, obviously looked like it was going to be a pretty tall order to run down that gap. You went for the overcut strategy, pit 1 lap later. It did at one point. The gap was down to 1.1 seconds, but as you say, just those last 5 to 6 laps, especially when the pair of you encountered those lapped cars, it looked like it really slowed you down a significant amount. But still, on these 1.5-mile tracks, two second place finishes it looks like it's pretty good. But next week we head to New Hampshire, and obviously that's quite a different challenge. It's short track. You got any thoughts on that race?
Yeah, I actually did. I did buy both of these tracks last week, New Hampshire and this one, and I did some laps in New Hampshire, and I feel pretty good. And I thought last week too, I would have done fine in the last track if it wasn't for that black flag that got me. I guess I learned a lesson there, but overall, very happy with my performance in oval, and I, just I'm gonna keep digging at it, see if I can take one from Regan for sure.
All right. Well, congratulations on the second place finish again tonight, and thank you for coming and chatting with us.
Thank you guys. Have a good night.
That was Abner Acosta coming home in second tonight in the Level Motorsport Chevrolet. James O'Brien was one of 3 drivers for his team to finish inside the top 5 and 2 to finish inside the top 3. James, let's talk through first things. First, how are you feeling coming home with the third tonight?
Pretty good. Better than I expected to finish, that's for sure.
What were your expectations then coming into tonight for where you felt like you were going to finish entering the evening?
I usually want at least a top 5, but I know there's a lot of strong drivers in the field, so and I try not to get my expectations up too high. As long as I can finish somewhere I'm happy with, like at least 5th. Obviously, anything lower than that, I'll be a little disappointed. But obviously, I want to win all the time, but it usually has to be a mistake by Abner or Brad or Richard. But for this, I was just happy. I've been lacking in consistency at this track in the fixed set. I never quite found consistent speed, in my opinion. So I'm just happy to come home with that.
I have to ask, it did look like at times you did find some lines which were working in some of the battles, especially the short to mid run, getting some extra rotation, center off in turn 4 especially. You put in a lot of testing time as well on the open side of things with underground racing. How much did that testing you did for that side of things carry over for tonight for the driving lines for Kentucky?
That helped a lot, because before that I was kind of lost on entry to 3. Richard helped a lot, kind of honing that and the certain lines that you could take, especially later in the run, moving up a groove. But the open, like just running races with the open set helped a lot just for finding the line. But with the fixed set, for some reason, I just couldn't hit the same, like my marks every lap. It would change for me. Might have just been lacking in concentration today, but yeah, that it definitely did help a lot.
New Hampshire's next on the calendar. Your thoughts on going back to the short track package next week?
That's one of my favorite tracks. Usually do pretty well there. Anything that involves actually having to drive the car a little bit more. Richard and I especially like those. It's his home track, I believe, but hopefully I can come up spoiler there.
Who do you want to thank for being a part of another top 3 finish this season?
Athlete Booker for sure, for having me and Joshua and Richard on, and Moto Million that's on the car, and Million Autos, and you guys for broadcasting. Looking to be a pretty good season for us, especially. So hopefully, are you guys broadcasting next week?
Yes,
awesome.
We are.
Good. Awesome. I'm watching it now in the background, so after this I'll go finish that. So I appreciate everything you guys do.
Congratulations on our top 3 tonight. Good job.
Thanks, Justin.
That's James O'Brien coming home in third tonight. Like to thank him, Abner Acosta, and Richard Reagan Jr. for taking the time to speak with us during post-race coverage. Now, first things first, Christian, your thoughts on how tonight fared here at Kentucky for these drivers?
I think it was definitely what we predicted in the pre-race, where the leader had a pretty significant advantage. Obviously, we did see some passing. We actually saw a bit more passing than I thought we'd see. Obviously, that very tight battle we had for second spot in the first half of the race. And once again, Richard Reagan Jr. just showing that on mile and a halves, if you put him out front, he's extremely difficult to beat. And again, tonight, once you got that little bit of an advantage, it was really kind of game over for everybody behind. Abner Acosta gave it a good run. James O'Brien, again, not able to challenge either. So these mile and a halves really looking in Regan Jr.'s favor, and obviously other tracks as well. It's not just the mile and a halves. And as we head to New Hampshire next week, I think that's going to be another really interesting race. Obviously a very different circuit to what we had tonight, and I think that should put on quite a show.
Hit upon it just a little bit there. Just so happens to be a track you're about to race at on Tuesday. What are some of the expectations fans should see for when the racing gets underway in New Hampshire, whether it's on Tuesday night or on Sunday night?
Well, one thing with New Hampshire, obviously being on the low downforce, high power package, is that it's very much kind of back in our hands in terms of how the car gets into and off the corner. You've really got very minimal aero assistance at that track. The corners are very flat. Entry is extremely challenging, I would say, and obviously, especially in a two wide scenario, that makes passing quite difficult. In the past, we've seen passing at that racetrack is notoriously difficult just because of how the lanes work, and I think that's going to continue to be the case. But at the same time, I think you should expect to see quite a bit of variance, especially in the open setup races. So I'm actually quite looking forward to it. I think it'll be a really good week of racing.
I think so too. I definitely know a lot of people who are looking forward to New Hampshire week on the iRacing service. It should be a fun one, to say the very least. But we'd like to thank you for tuning in to tonight's exciting action from Kentucky. We'd also like to thank Charles Sumner and the rest of the Precision Racing League organization for running this strong series on a week-to-week basis, as many other organizations across the iRacing service. I'd also like to take the time real quick to thank iRacing, Flea Market, Diecast Kings, Road Trip Transport, and ButtKicker for being sponsors, whether for tonight's race or whether for the entire campaign in 2020 Season 3. Are you interested in advertising with GSRC? Our channel's 1 million monthly global impressions are a great way to get your branding seen by a diverse audience. Follow the link in the description on YouTube for tonight's broadcast to learn more about how you can get involved with the Global SimRacing Channel. Also, like to take the time at this point to thank the company to provide the software and hardware to all GSRC broadcasts listed up on your screen now. Additional thanks also go to Jude Lalonde, who provides our wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a more whole of her great work. Thanks to the team today, and Christian and Sean. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC and the upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. If you'd like to help support the channel, check out our merchandise for sale at gsrc.storevy.com, or check out our social media on Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global SimRacing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. Don't forget to head over to our YouTube page and hit that big red subscribe button so you don't miss a moment here in the Global SimRacing Channel. Next race takes place at New Hampshire. That takes place at about 8:45, 8:50 p.m. Eastern Time. Start for the broadcast. Qualifying begins at 9 p.m. Eastern. That's 6 Pacific. You can catch that here on the Global SimRacing Channel for what should be some exciting action. We also have upcoming races for other series listed up on your screen, so check those out as well and mark them down in your calendar. But until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.